Hey there, bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles. If you are looking for a really thought-provoking book, maybe check out Project F by Jeanne DuPrau. So I'm just going to start with the fact that I totally picked up this book for no other reason than the fact that it was Jeanne DuPrau. And if you know anything about her, she has written the City of Embers series. A movie was eventually made of the first book. There are several books in that series. And so I didn't even read the information, the summary of this book. I just picked it up simply because it was written by her, and I really enjoyed the City of Ember series, and my daughter enjoyed reading that too. Unfortunately, Project F doesn't quite live up to that series or expectations, but it's not a complete loss. Out of 5, I would probably give it a 3. It is a quick read. And most importantly, it is intriguing. There are parts of it that are awkward, and so I'll talk about those. But the premise of the book is like this idea of what if, like what would like be like if everyone stopped using fossil fuels. And so that is the premise of the book. The author does talk about how this was really like, she's not advocating necessarily for anything per se, but it was just her own personal way of exploring the topic. So in the world of the book, in the history, the leaders of the countries just decide that one day they're just all going to stop using fossil fuels. So they talk about how the only way to stop is to actually stop. And so that's what they do. And the result of that is just this crisis and calamity, as you could imagine, if one day, instead of progressively making changes, we just stopped. And so that's sort of what this book is, but it's like 100 years or so later after it's been stopped. So it's probably more than 100 years, but the idea is that that was in the history, and so now we're moving forward in time and what life is like after the fact, after everyone's adapted, after things have been changed, and that's really what the book is about. Chapter 15 and then pages 124 to like 130 sort of go into that history of the society and the story. Like I said in the author's note, DuPrau does discuss a time when she made her own sustainable house off of solar energy. And so she's really intrigued. She was also empowered by that possibility. And so this was meant to be like a what if kind of exploration of what life would be like if we didn't use fossil fuels anymore. If it was a criminal offense to even attempt to use fossil fuels, like what would that be like? One thing I would say she does fail to explore, which in truth is probably beyond the scope of this particular novel, is that there really are concerns and consequences both ways. And so we can't want to make everything battery powered and not talk about the mining methods or the repercussions that the mining for those minerals may have on society. And so, like I said, that's something that's not presented in the book. That's probably beyond the scope of the novel. She's just exploring this idea of what if. And I think it's really good to encourage our children to use their imagination to consider what if worlds, like what if certain things happened. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just it's thought-provoking to consider. The story is in third-person narration, and it follows Keith and Lulu. And so you find out, so Lulu is Keith's cousin, and her parents died in the ocean. They drowned, and due to circumstances, the family sends Keith, who's only 13 years old, to take a train to get Lulu from the district and area that she lives in and bring her back to live with them. Lulu is only 6. So some of her dialogue and thoughts in the story are a little bit beyond a 6-year-old, but it's a story. On the train, though, Keith meets a man named Malcolm. Malcolm shares a little bit about the secret project that he's working on, which is Project F. And Falcon mistakenly takes Keith's bag instead of his when he gets off the train. So you can imagine how that sort of begins the story. After picking up Lulu, Keith wants to return Malcolm's bag to him, but he also wants to find out, like, what is this project that Malcolm is actually working on. Malcolm does almost die near the end of the book, and Keith is also almost banished for being a part of the project. And Lulu is left keeping the secret of what Keith is doing. She's also keeping a secret about the death of her parents and something that she's been holding in. The story is a bit awkward in that there are these different storylines that are weaved together. So you have the stuff with Keith and Lulu, but then there's also this like group of girls that live in the same city, and every first Tuesday they go on these adventures. And in the adventures, at the end, Keith and Lulu are invited, but they're just doing different things, like having a fashion show or having a picnic or all these other things. I think the purpose of that storyline is to reimagine like the creativity that could reemerge without TV and entertainment, because the TV doesn't exist. And then also like, I don't know, maybe what you can do without fossil fuels, I guess, and driving around, because they ride their bikes. So there's no like, driving cars anywhere in the story. So ultimately you see Malcolm is presented as not necessarily like an evil character, but like he is definitely the antagonist of the story. And he talks about that powerful people want everything to remain the same as it is for so long. They've squashed ideas like ours over and over. They can't squash something they don't know about. And that's Malcolm. Malcolm is trying to reintroduce fossil fuels and trying to make a way for people to travel. And that's part of what Project F is. So I'm going to try not to give too much away in that regard. So there's some interesting things. One good quote from the book was that kind of questioning like, what's more important, doing what you want or doing what's right? So again, she's got it leaning towards, trying to stay away from the fossil fuels, but you could use those ideas and thoughts regarding anything. The novel does have a good job of giving strong parents to Keith, who try to help lead him correctly, and to parent Lulu and lead her through her grief. And so I think that's really good. The negative side of keeping secrets is what's presented in this book. So it's not presented as a good thing that Lulu has kept all these secrets, but they're trying to help her work through them and reveal them. And that once she reveals the secrets that she's been holding, she does have peace and reconciliation. Again, a good message for our young readers that they shouldn't be holding on to those secrets and emotions. They need to share them. Overall, the story has an intriguing premise. I think if it were longer or more drawn out, it probably would have been too much. But for a short read, it's an interesting exploration, one that the author is very clear is just her own thoughts, just what she thought life could be like. She does say in her author's note, I wrote Project F to imagine the one way that things might turn out. Is it the best way? No. The best way wouldn't include a global catastrophe. But writing the book helps me to think about what sort of world we might want if we could start from scratch. So I think that's a good observation and a good thing for her to mention. She does also mention the negatives. In the author's note, she does only mention the negatives of fossil fuels and the damage done to the environment. Just an observation. She doesn't give any sources for the information that she presents, so just something to consider. She does likewise mention that modern marvels that we have are because of fossil fuels, so knowing that life would be different. But again, I think being good stewards of God's creation is something that we're definitely all called to do. But, we need to obviously have conversations where we listen to one another and we really consider the repercussions of everything, and it's not just a black and white. I think that's one of the important things to talk about with our readers and people in general, is that it's not so simple as a black and white issue. It's definitely complex considering the way our society runs today. But if you have a child who's a bit of a dreamer and likes a little what if and some intrigue, you can definitely check out Project F. It is a clean read. You're not going to find anything unsavory or anything that you wouldn't want your reader exposed to in the book.